Hello friends, welcome back. We from IAS Academy are going to deal with the daily news analysis of the Hindu newspaper. We started it just yesterday, that is the 16th of April. We are going to continue that initiative. The first topic we are going to pick up is towards a regional reset. So how is India dealing with its neighbors in the recent past? Has it changed its stance? That is, India, has it changed its stance when it comes to dealing with its neighbors, especially China, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan? So how is it dealing with these countries? Has it continued to be stubborn, or has it changed into a more conciliatory path? So the government's foreign policy moves over the past few months represent an unannounced but profound shift in its thinking about the neighborhood. So though it's not saying out in open, but what we see tacitly, what the government is doing, looks like there has been a change in its foreign policy. One important aspect regarding this is the reset with China. Has there been really a reset with China? Is the question. While the trigger for the rapprochement, or so as to say, the reconciliation between the two neighbors, was a peaceful resolution of the Doklam standoff, where there was a considerable troop movement around the Doklam area, and Doklam related to your Bhutan. The outcome of the easing of tension is being seen in New Delhi's public postures this year onwards, where the government has taken enough care not to respond with any heed to the reports of Chinese build-up again near Doklam. It has taken it in stride. The government has also gone to some lengths to turn down the planned celebrations marking the anniversary of Dalai Lama's arrival from Tibet. Even that's not been celebrated with much pomp. New Delhi and Beijing have embarked on a flurry of high-level visits. There have been exchange of visits. High-level delegations have made from India to China, China to India. There have been a lot of new meetings. The shift has given rise to speculation that the two sides are intent on making a progress when it comes to the smoothing of ties, rather than making antagonistic statements against each other. By this way, they want to resolve the outstanding issues like the boundary negotiations, alongside the widening trade deficit, which is to be dealt with so as to narrow it in the coming days. So the trade deficit is an issue between India and China for long, where India has a lot of trade deficit when it comes to China. So the reset with China will only work, that is India taking a reconciliatory stand, that is going smooth with China, would only work in the longer run if there are transactional dividends, that is both have gains, that is both New Delhi and Beijing have both gained. Two issues on which both the governments can show some flexibility is the China's Belt and Road Initiative and India's bid for Nuclear Suppliers Group membership, where China can bring down its barriers to India's membership at the NSG, which India looks with a lot of envy. And the second thing is about the BRI, that is Belt Road Initiative. If there was enough political will on both the sides, they can look for creative solutions to solve India's three main concerns. One is on the territorial integrity, second is the transparency of the projects, and third, the sustainability of these projects. The solution, of course, is pretty much under consideration, the proposal which is under consideration right now, which includes the extension of the CPEC corridor, that is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, to Afghanistan, which would be later called as PACE, that is Pakistan-Afghanistan-China Economic Corridor. This would essentially shift the projects away from the Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So this would resolve, at least superficially, the problems which India has raised, or the concerns which India has raised. Moving away from China, how is India dealing with Maldives? Despite several appeals by the Maldivian opposition and nudges from the US so as to tinker with President Abdullah Amin, who had declared a state of emergency in the country, India did not meddle with the affairs. It stayed away from this. India staying away from it alongside not engaging with China in a confrontational mode, and this sent a right message to China as well as Maldives. The government remained silent as Mali went a step further and held discussions with Pakistan's army chief on joint patrolling of its exclusive economic zone. This area is considered to be, India's domain in the Indian Ocean. Even though Maldives government went ahead with discussions with with the Pakistan, India did not raise any concern. Why? Because it did not want to get into a confrontational mood with China. And how is India dealing with Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh? So it is quite clear that in Nepal, the forces which have come to power, or the dispensation which is in power right now, is the one which is opposed to Indian interests, right? It was not so happy with India, especially when Nepal's constitutional rule was taken up, and India was not quite happy with the Nepal's constitution because of the Madheshi issue. So this was in 2015-16. However, now with China, revving up its infrastructure development in Nepal would obviously, make India feel bad about it. But what India has done is it has rolled out a red carpet for the Nepali Prime Minister KP Oli, who was in the opposition then in 2015-16, and now he's in the ruling party. So there has also been outreach to Bhutan and Bangladesh in the recent weeks. Both Bhutan and Bangladesh are to hold elections this year, and with the incumbent governments, the present governments, more favorably disposed to New Delhi than their challenges in the opposition, the results will have an impact on India's influence in these countries as well. The most important topic, or so as to say, when it comes to India's neighborhood, the most important neighbor whom we are concerned with is the Pakistan. The government has admitted in the recent past, in the parliament of course, that the NACs of both the countries have been meeting on a regular basis through the established channels of communications at various levels. This has been happening post-Pathankot, of course, that is the Pathankot attacks. Meanwhile, the resolution of the standard for the treatment of diplomats in Delhi and Islamabad indicates that neither government has the appetite for escalation at this point. So, India and Pakistan are moving away from the confrontational mode towards a reconciliatory mode. Both are not interested in throwing accusations at each other. They want to sit down and talk. So that's where they're headed to. SARC re-engagement, how is it going? India, in the last year or two, has been saying that it would not show, at least it's not showing much of a interest in SARC until and unless Pakistan is not a part of it. So where Pakistan gets in, India wants to go out, precisely for this reason, and this is not without reason, of course. India is not happy with what Pakistan is doing. So a regional reset will be complete if the government also decides to reconsider its opposition to the SARC summit this year, which is being hosted by Pakistan. Afghanistan, which had supported the move to pull out of the SARC summit in Islamabad in 2016, following the Uri attacks, is engaging with Pakistan again. Sri Lanka and Nepal, both sympathetic to India's outrage over Uri attack, that is a Uri terrorist attack, are pushing for a summit this year. What we can say in conclusion is that all around it would appear that India's hard power strategy in the region is being replaced with a more soft power one, that is a conciliatory one. However, the next steps will be defined not by the quiet and defensive approach to redefining India's foreign policy in the region, but with a more bold and a proactive one. With several countries from Europe to Central Asia and East Asia now echoing India's concerns about the environmental and the debt trap risks that BRI projects pose, India could take a lead in creating an international template for infrastructure and connectivity proposals, one that would seek to engage China and other donor countries in a structured approach towards debt financing. This would win India goodwill in the neighborhood too, where every other country apart from Bhutan has signed on the BRI. So, one thing India could do is become more proactive in its foreign policy rather than being quiet and defensive. Second is that there are certain things India could play a certain role whereby it could create an international template for infrastructure and connectivity proposals, and by engaging China, of course, and other donor countries as well. So debt financing is one area which needs proper orientation. Here, India could play a role. And the next topic, another opinion piece, at home and in exile. This is about how people are getting displaced and would get displaced in the near future due to climate change. This would be rather forced. The movement of people or the migration of people within the countries itself would be rather forced, the internal migration. So this is apart from the migrations we are seeing in the recent past, that is in the last 2 to 3 years. At home and in exile, that title is quite apt here. People are forcibly displaced due to war, political persecution, economic instability, and repression. Recent examples being the Syrian and the Rohingya crisis. Still, most of the world's migration is internal, and that is within the same country. People usually change their homes to increase their incomes, to increase the standard of living. And for some of the reasons like marriage and for the purposes of family, they generally move. Another factor which is under consideration which is causing the movement of people is the climate change. The effects of climate change, such as the droughts, sea level rise, water shortages, will cause in the near future people to leave their homes and move to safer places. This decision to move would be rather forced. At the start, maybe it would look normal, but in the coming years, say a decade or say after, it would be forced. The gradual rise in the levels of sea levels would be an example, an important example where the island nations people in the Pacific and Indian Oceans have become already climate exiles, right? They have left their homes, there is out migration of all sorts. So why do people move? So in its report, the World Bank, the report named Groundswell, Preparing for Internal Climate Migration. The major forced migrations would occur in Latin America, South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa 2050 as a result of the slow onset of climate events alone. This potentially points to the fact that wherever we have a sort of disregard for the climate, there we would see a lot of internal migration happening, and the effects of the climate change would be more pronounced in these areas where there is disregard for climate change mostly. On a lighter side, of course, the US president has a disregard for climate change. However, that would change in the coming years if the dispensation changes. Coming to South Asia, South Asia is characterized by rain-fed farmland in large parts of the region. With variability in the monsoons and warmer temperatures, crop failures will lead to migration from the Ganges plains and from the rice-growing northeast of Bangladesh and the inundated coast. So obviously, the present grain-growing areas, that is rice and wheat, these areas would face problems, and people will be moving towards other areas. Another aspect which has been proved is the rural to urban migration. The poor would be the worst affected, of course, with global climate change, which would make the cities and peri-urban surroundings the target for movements. Such hotspots of in and out migration will be stressed for natural resources, public services, and livelihoods. In India, areas between Chennai and Bangalore have been highlighted in the report, along with those around Mexico City, Guatemala City, and Nairobi. So, what can be done regarding this? Reducing the GHG emissions is of utmost urgency. Second is the integrating of the internal migration with the ongoing development planning. That would be really, really important. So that the problems of water shortage, waste management, nutritional deficiency, limited services such as health and education, and poor infrastructure can be addressed. Ecosystems is the third issue which is to be taken into consideration as a part of the natural resources. It ought to be protected as special ecological zones, so that urban settlements expand. They don't eat into the ecosystem services. They have to expand, yes, that is the urban settlements, but they should not eat into the ecosystem services. So it is talking about the sustainable development. One more aspect, less probed by most of the reports, is about the skill development, job creation, and the education of people. How it impacts migration. This impacts migration to a great extent. Why? Because rights of those people who are forced to migrate, to new areas, experience ignorance from the natives. In order to solve this problem, they have to be provided with proper jobs, proper skills, and proper education. Ignoring the issues of social justice and equity in adaptation can lead to serious governance failure. So that's it for today, and I will take up the newspaper section of tomorrow. That is the 18th. Again, and thank you.